In the rugged, sun-scorched plains of Western Australia, a peculiar conflict brewed amidst the tranquil backdrop of nature's beauty. It was a war like no other, where the combatants weren't hardened soldiers clad in armor, but rather feathered warriors with a penchant for mischief and a disdain for human intervention. This is the tale of the Great Emu War of 1932, a bizarre chapter in history where man and bird clashed in a battle of wits, wills, and feathers. Amidst the vast, sun-baked expanse of Western Australia, a peculiar drama unfolded in the wake of World War I. Picture this. Discharged veterans, armed with a spirit of adventure and a pocket full of dreams, were granted plots of land by the Australian government to try their hand at farming. But oh, how the whims of fate can turn a promising tale into a quirky comedy! As the Great Depression cast its shadow over the land in 1929, these newfound farmers faced a dilemma. Encouraged to sow the seeds of prosperity by expanding their wheat crops, they eagerly awaited the government's promised subsidies. Alas, like a fickle lover, the assistance failed to materialize, leaving our brave farmers in a pickle. But wait, there's more! Enter the emus, those flightless troublemakers on a march of mayhem. With the allure of cultivated fields and fresh water, these feathered freeloaders descended upon the farmers' lands like a feathered plague, munching on crops with reckless abandon. To make matters worse, they tore down fences, inviting even more chaos in the form of pesky rabbits. Faced with this feathery invasion, the farmers did what any desperate bunch would do. They called in the cavalry. Well, not quite the cavalry, but close enough. A delegation of ex-soldiers, seasoned by the trenches of World War I, marched to meet with the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pierce. And what did they request? Machine guns! Yes, you heard that right. These veterans-turned-farmers figured a good old-fashioned barrage of bullets would send those emus packing. Now, you might think Pierce would dismiss such a peculiar request with a chuckle and a pat on the back. But no. He readily agreed, albeit with a few strings attached. The guns would be manned by military personnel, the transport funded by the Western Australian government, and the farmers left footing the bill for food, lodging, and, of course, ammunition. And so, armed with military might and a dash of cinematic flair, thanks to a Fox Movietone cinematographer tagging along, the stage was set for the oddest showdown in Australian history, the Great Emu War of 1932. Oh, what a time to be alive. Ah, the saga of the Great Emu War of 1932, a tale as quirky as it is quizzical, filled with feathered foes, frustrated farmers, and a military mission gone awry continues. As the clouds of the Great Depression loomed over the Australian countryside, our plucky veterans-turned-farmers found themselves in a bind. Promised subsidies by the government to bolster their wheat crops, they instead found their fields overrun by an unexpected horde of emus. These flightless freeloaders, migrating in droves, descended upon the farmlands like a feathery plague, devouring crops faster than you can say "bird's the word." Enter Major Gwynedd Purves Wyn Aubrey Meredith, a man with a military pedigree and a mission to rid the land of this avian menace. Armed with 2 trusty Lewis guns and a bellyful of bravado, Meredith and his squad of soldiers set out to teach these feathered intruders a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. But alas, the emus were no pushovers. Despite their ungainly appearance, these birds were wily and elusive, scattering like dandelion seeds at the slightest hint of danger. The first attempt at warfare turned into a comedy of errors, with the soldiers finding themselves outmaneuvered by their flightless foes. Undeterred, Meredith and his men pressed on, their determination matched only by the emus' stubborn resilience. Ambushes were laid, bullets flew, and yet the emus seemed to mock their human adversaries with their uncanny ability to evade capture. Major Meredith, in a moment of both frustration and begrudging admiration, likened the emus to Zulus, nimble and indomitable, impervious to bullets, and seemingly unstoppable. But the battle raged on. With each passing day, the soldiers honed their tactics, their aim improving as they learned to anticipate the emus' movements. Slowly but surely the tide began to turn. By December, the soldiers had amassed an impressive tally of confirmed kills, their machine guns proving to be surprisingly effective against their feathery foes. And as the dust settled and the emus retreated, the farmers breathed a sigh of relief, their crops spared from further devastation. Ah, the Emu Wars. The saga that kept on giving, like a slapstick comedy with a dash of ecological intrigue and a sprinkle of bureaucratic bungling. Despite the chaos and confusion of the initial cull, the farmers of Western Australia weren't ready to throw in the towel just yet. No, sir, they had a bone to pick with those pesky emus, and they weren't about to let a little setback dampen their spirits. So they did what any determined bunch would do. They called in the cavalry, or at least they tried to. In 1934, 1943, and 1948, the beleaguered farmers pleaded with the powers that be for military assistance once more. But alas, their cries fell on deaf ears. The government had other plans, or perhaps they'd had their fill of emu-related shenanigans. Instead, they stuck to what seemed to work, the good old bounty system. And lo and behold, it worked like a charm. Over 57,000 bounties were claimed in just 6 months in 1934, proving that sometimes money talks louder than bullets. Meanwhile, across the pond in the United Kingdom, word of the Emu War spread like wildfire. But while some conservationists furrowed their brows and clutched their pearls at the thought of a feathered massacre, others saw it for what it was, an absurd attempt at mass bird eradication. Even the esteemed Australian ornithologists, Dominic Cerventi and Hubert Whittle, couldn't help but shake their heads at the sheer folly of it all. But fear not, for not all hope was lost. In the midst of this avian absurdity, a glimmer of ingenuity emerged: exclusion barrier fencing. Yes, you heard that right. Fences to keep those emus at bay, along with any other critters that dared to nibble on the farmers' crops. It was a simple solution to a not-so-simple problem, and it seemed to do the trick. Fast forward to 1950, and the emu issue reared its feathery head once more in federal parliament. Hugh Leslie, bless his heart, took it upon himself to tackle the problem head-on, urging the Army minister to release a hefty stash of ammunition for the farmers' use. And much to everyone's surprise, the minister gave the green light, approving the release of a whopping 500,000 rounds of .303 ammo. And so, the saga of the Emu Wars continued, a strange and whimsical chapter in the annals of Australian history. Who knew that a bunch of flightless birds could cause such a fuss? And so, dear viewers, we bid adieu to the Emu Wars, a tale of feathers, folly, and the resilience of both man and bird. As the dust settled and the emus reclaimed their territory, one thing became abundantly clear. Sometimes the battles we wage are as much against our own absurdity as they are against any external foe. But fear not, for amidst the chaos and confusion, there's a lesson to be learned. Whether it's facing down a horde of feathered invaders or tackling the quirks of bureaucracy, the spirit of perseverance prevails. And while the Emu Wars may be consigned to the annals of history, their legacy lives on, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dared to take on the feathered fiends of Western Australia. So let us raise a toast to the emus, the farmers, and the soldiers who fought valiantly in this most peculiar of conflicts. May their antics be remembered fondly, their absurdity celebrated, and their feathers forever ruffled in the winds of time. For in the end, it's not the outcome of the battle that matters most, but the tales we tell and the laughter we share along the way. That's it for this week's episode. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to join me again as I delve into our weird and wacky world.